All right. Good day, everyone. We are here today again with a friend of the show, Kevork Almassian, and a mutual friend, I could say, Tarik Cyril Amar. Of course, he's a much closer friend to Kevork, but he has been on our show, and um, and I wanted to discuss with you guys a bit about the current state of affairs. Palestine, what is going on in Europe, etc., etc. And I thought, okay, who better than ask Kevork and your, well, actually, you could say your co-host sometimes, even Tarik, about the things that are going on. And I actually wanted to start with Germany. You are both Germans. Or
I'm not yet.
you're a new you're a new German Kevork.
I'm a German with attitude.
Yeah, right. And as a guy from the Netherlands myself, I see a lot of similarities where it comes to Germany. But somehow you guys are 20 years behind us. We had all these discussions that you have. All these discussions about immigrants, Islamophobia, Zionism, all that stuff. We had it 20 years ago with a guy called Geert Wilders, and all the stuff that happened back in the day. And I see just like it's almost like a carbon copy happening in other parts of Europe right now. And there's one thing I saw today when I saw a discussion on another channel, and there was this lady, and she is actually a co-host of the electronic Intifada. Her name is Nora Barrows Friedman. I don't know if you know her, but she said something really good, and I'm also bothered by that. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna ask my two German and semi-German friend Kevork about this, and it is a question of German guilt. I find it a very, very interesting question when it comes to today, Israel, Zionism, the genocide in Palestine. And she said something really good, and that really struck a chord with me. She said, I'm kind of sick of hearing of the whole German guilt thing. I'm kind of sick of it. And she said, don't give me that nonsense, because if there was German guilt, they would not be supporting the genocide on the Palestinians for 2 years. And I have that same feeling. I'm a kind of sick of that stupid argument of, oh, the German guilt for the Second World War. If there was German guilt for the Second World War, real German guilt, you would not be supporting a blatant genocide right now. And you would also feel a lot of guilt for what happened to the what was it, to the Herero and Nama people, if I'm not mistaken, which we never hear about. So before I talk too long, what is your guys' conception of this whole idea of German guilt? Because I'm kind of sick of it, to be very honest.
First
Tarik,
of all,
maybe I can start with you.
Tarik will go and answer this, and disclaimer: the opinions expressed by Tarik represents Tarik.
So I think I understand Nora Barrows Friedman's point very well. I'm also sick of that use of German guilt, or that pretense of guilt. I would like to refine it a little bit for myself. Not that I'm saying hers isn't refined enough, but for myself, I would like to say, I think what we are talking about is not even genuine guilt. That's, I think, her point. And I had that feeling a long time ago, sometime after this Gaza genocide began and gathered speed, as it were, and after it became absolutely clear that the Germans have no inhibitions about joining Israel in many ways, I would say, not only as accomplices, but as co-perpetrators. It occurred to me that, yes, they're feeling bad about the war, the Second World War, and they're feeling bad about, and I'm putting this now very bluntly, being caught with the Holocaust. They're feeling bad about it, but it's not guilt, because you're absolutely right. Guilt would produce a different response. If it was real guilt, real shame, right, they would not be able to support and they supported enthusiastically at times the Gaza genocide. I mean, the degree of brutality, rhetorical brutality that Germans exert against Palestinians is astounding, right? It's not just that they're going along. It's some of them, quite a few of them, revel in it, right? Pallywood and all of this is very popular with them, to slag off the Palestinians while they're being mass murdered with German help, right? So if it were real guilt, none of this could be happening. I think what's happening, what is really taking place in Germany, is that the Germans have always felt uncomfortable about losing the war, right? And they have felt uncomfortable about having to live with the fact that they committed the enormous genocide of the Holocaust and that everybody knows. They're uncomfortable. It's not a good feeling. They don't like it, but it's not real guilt. I think most of them have never faced this really as guilt. That's a very pessimistic conclusion to which I came after a while. And it's not where I was before this Gaza genocide happened. It's not. I'd never thought about it in these very skeptical terms. But the Gaza genocide and Germany's role in it has really made me believe that this whole construct of we respond in certain ways to Israeli violence because of the guilt of Germany, there's something fundamentally wrong with it. I agree.
Actually, the guilt, in my opinion, is also due to the education system. And I remember when I first came to Germany, I went to a course, which is integration course in Germany, because I'm a newcomer. And the history is told even to the foreigners in the same way that it is told to the German people. And in this case, that Germany has a historical and moral responsibility towards the Jewish community. And I believe Germany should have this responsibility, but this comes also at the same time or in parallel of another moral responsibility to not repeat a similar heinous act against any other people, regardless of their ethnicity or religious background. In Germany, you find that, for example, when the war in Ukraine or the hot war in Ukraine started, we don't see much of German flags here, even on the government buildings in Berlin, but we started seeing the Ukraine flag, for example. And then when the Gaza onslaught started, then we witnessed a second flag, and that is the Israeli flag. So when you are in the street and you're walking near the municipality, the Rathaus, for example, you have the Israeli flag and the Ukraine flag and the LGBTQ plus flag, for example, but no German flag. So those are all, of course, the government policy, let's say, to give this visual impression to the people that we are on the side of this. We are on the Ukrainian side, we are on the side of Israel, and we are on the side of this identity politics, for example. But on the other hand, we have politicians, right? And I have met with MPs in the local parliament and in the federal parliament in Germany. All of them know what is going on in Gaza. It's not like something hidden from them. And they also have social media accounts. They're present on X, they're present on Instagram, they're present on all the social media platforms. And it is impossible to scroll social media and not to see this thing, especially that you're involved in politics. So your algorithm is showing you naturally this footage coming from Gaza or from Palestine. And many of them told me that they are against it and they don't like to see these children being blown up. At the same time, they also told me that they can't say anything against it due to the structural or the institutional, let's say, pro-Israel position in the German government and all the institutions, that anyone in a public sector would lose definitely his reputation, his job, his career, and everything. So people decided to be on their own opportunistic or the financial interest. And then you have a different type of politicians enthusiastically, let's say, on the side of Israel. And Tarik knows some of them. Now they are in the coalition, in the government coalition, and they have Israel flag in their bios, and they are writing about Israel, let's say, more than they speak about their own affairs. Like, these people were elected to represent the interests of the German people, but they speak about about Israel more than they speak about the German affairs, similar to these congressmen and congresswomen on AIPAC money. If you go to their Twitter accounts, it's crazy. If they post 10 posts, you have 7 or 6 of them is about Israel. So I think this is more. It's not like exclusive to Germany. It's something that has become the part of the let's say the identity of the ruling elites in the West, and I don't see that there is so much difference between the people who are ruling in France and the people who are ruling Germany. It has become a different type of governance, in my opinion, which is more based on the corporation interest, the lobbies, and also ideology is playing a big role in this. Meanwhile, of course, they accuse the people in our region of being radical ideologues.
Yeah, exactly. And it's I think I think this has really exposed the kind of structural power that the Zionist lobby, just Israel actually has across the West. It's a similar story literally in every country. It's baffling. Like we have in the Netherlands, we have our Zionist institutes, our pro-Israel institutions that really character assassinate anyone who says something about Israel. You have them in Denmark, you have them in Germany, you have them in the UK. It's such an oiled machine. It's really baffling. And it brings me. Tarik said something very interesting just now, or was it you, Kevork, about the Twitter, what you saw on Twitter? Because that reminds me of a discussion that I had with my co-host Peter, who always said we have that ancient battle, him and I. He says things are ignorance. I say a lot of things are actually is malice. So, for example, he would say a lot of people are pro-Zionist not because they're evil or nefarious, but because they're simply ignorant. And I believe that with a media system, we are kept ignorant. He has a very good point there. But I say there is so much evidence of, even if you're ignorant, of immoral stuff happening right now. Kids being burned alive, women and children being raped, people being tortured. Even if you were ignorant, if you still support what's going on by saying, release the hostages, there must be something nefarious about you. There must be something malignant. It must be.
I mean,
yeah, go ahead, Tarik.
Sorry to interrupt you, but if I may, I have to take your side here because, look, what is specific about this Gaza genocide, and of course, not the only thing that Israel has done, right? It has also assaulted the West Bank. It has assaulted Iran, Yemen, Syria, of course, Lebanon, right? But what is so specific about the Gaza genocide is, and everybody has been pointing it out, and it's still true, that this is a live-streamed genocide, the first one in history. We have not yet had a live-streamed genocide, especially at the beginning, but this is by no means entirely over. It was also unusual in that the perpetrators were incredibly eager to show us what they were doing and telling us what they were thinking and what they want to do. And they haven't stopped that, right? I mean, right now we've seen another escalation of this publicity on their side, but they very clearly said, yeah, now we want to take all of Gaza. Well, you've always wanted to take all of Gaza. Duh, we know, right? You've talked about Amalek, you've talked about total blockade, you've talked about animals. It's all out there. So that's why, especially with the Gaza genocide, not only, but especially, I really think the argument about abetting Zionist evil from ignorance is dead. I'm sorry, I'll be very direct here. It's dead. It's been tested. It's been empirically tested, and it needs to be dropped now. Because if you're still ignorant at this point, you want to be. Because the information is flying in an explosion around you all the time. If you're still ignorant at this point, you want to be ignorant. If you're still repeating, for instance, that Hamas mass murdered babies, or that Hamas killed 1,200 people. We by now know that the Israelis killed a large share of these victims themselves on October the 7th. This is all out, including even in Israeli media, So if you're still repeating this bullshit, you must want to do that. There's no other way. So ignorance, no, not after this. Absolutely not. It's over. I'm sorry.
And I think we should also, sorry for now interrupting you, Tarik, but I think also we should just say this. We should say it as it is. The elephant in the room, which is a big taboo in Europe, the big R word. It's just bloody racism, and a lot of people are just scared to admit it. Oh, you cannot say it's racism. Full effect. You know, like people. If you can say this stuff, you can see this. Your humanity is just cut off for a certain group of people or a large part of people, because if you just still whine about, oh, they have to release the hostages, and while you see tens of thousands of children being slaughtered, you know,
not to speak of the Palestinian hostages, thousands and thousands of the Israelis who have been tortured and mistreated in every degrading way, including sexually, for decades. And the Israelis have escalated this during this genocide. So this endless talk about the hostages only on one side, and the Palestinians who are in these torture dungeons and camps that the Israelis sadistically maintain are treated as if this were legitimately taken prisoners. It's ridiculous too. All that information is out as well. It's all done. It's over.
Yeah, I think all you said here is it's bringing me into a different direction, and that is how to stop, right? Like putting any hope in any Western government, in my opinion, is ridiculous for me, at least. Like this has been shown now after October 7. And yesterday, when Paris received the former head of Al Qaeda, shaking hands with him like nothing happened, he was the partner of Abu Bakr Baghdadi. He vowed allegiance to Abu Bakr Baghdadi. They were together. So I think this facade about the moral high ground in the West, or the Western governments will come and uplift us in the Middle East from our misery, this is a complete, in my opinion, it is a propaganda that we were fed from very young age. And then when I come to Europe, yes, Europe is advanced more, let's say, industrially and infrastructure, etc., than the Middle East. But when it comes to the foreign policy of these countries vis-a-vis, this is what we are concerned about, right? I mean, in their own countries, that's why many people come to Germany. That's why many people go to France, and not the other way around. I totally understand that. But I also want to say, in our region, it's our responsibility to stop this in what is happening. So we have Palestinians being subjected to the most heinous crime in our recent time, basically, in the past few decades. And then you have other actors in the region who are supposed to be helping the Palestinians and not helping the Palestinians, right? And this is not something this shouldn't be the moral responsibility, but rather the interest of these countries to help the Palestinians. Because if Israel can commit such a crime against the Palestinians, what makes you think that the Israelis won't commit such a crime against the Egyptians or against the Jordanians or against the Syrians or the Lebanese, which they did in Lebanon? They have shown that they're capable, and they will do it over and over again. So you have since the Second World War, since Sykes-Picot, when everything was divided, but then after World War II, they have told us we're independent, but that's not true. That's not true. Many of the governments in the region are not independent. They are still under heavy influence of the imperial powers, and they're the ones who facilitated this genocide against the Palestinians, right? So this is one point. The other point is the axis which fought against the Israeli axis, right, in this case. And this is something that I have been criticized a lot for saying, but I don't think that they have done enough to stop the genocide. And when there was the strategic war started, which is a decisive war, they didn't act united. and they acted in a way that when the decision was to be made whether to stop this genocide or not, every country decided to act independently and just care about their own interests in this case. Now, only Yemen is retaliating, but Yemen will not be able to stop the genocide. They will be able to disrupt the security and peace and stability, let's say, in Israel, but they will not be able to stop it. They don't border Palestine, and they are not able to bring any tangible support into Palestine. So I remember in 2012 when Hezbollah decided to go to Syria. This was in early 2012, and Nasrallah said back then that we're going to Syria not only to protect Syria, but to protect our borders with Syria, which means our supply chains, which is we are sending these weapons to Palestine. Like, he was so honest, saying like, guys, we're sending weapons to Gaza. Like, this is all coming either from Syria or through Syria. And if Syria falls, Palestine will fall. And then you see when the situation happened again in Syria, all Arabic countries stood on the side of Jordani, including Qatar, which pretends to be pro-Palestine in this case. And they have managed to, at a very sensitive time, because we have to see the chronology of the events. Like, imagine in October, the Jordanian foreign minister comes to Damascus and brings a message from the US and Israel that in November there is going to be a ceasefire in Lebanon, and then you will implement the ceasefire agreement, which means you have to seal the borders. And when Syria said no, and the moment the ceasefire agreement reached in Lebanon, at the same night, 6 hours later, these Jolani forces attacked Aleppo. This was all designed to crumble the axis which fought against the Israeli axis in the region. So we're now talking about all these important topics, but I'm trying to see what's the solution. And to be honest, I'm very pessimistic about the situation. And I see that the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians is closer than we think it is under such circumstances, because there is no military power in the region which is willing to stop it. And Israel will not stop with diplomatic statements. And I'm not calling for violence for the Stasi and for the police or for whoever is watching this in Germany. I'm just saying realistically, not diplomatic statements will not stop. Political pressure will not stop, and court sessions will not stop this. We have tried it. We have seen it. So what's the solution? Yeah. I also want to hear your thoughts, because I'm just seeing like a panorama in front of my eyes, a mass influx of Palestinians leaving Gaza sooner than we think it is.
Yeah, I totally agree with you here, Kevork. And just a small remark about what you said, about of course, Europe is technologically advanced, and when you go to Europe and compared to other parts of the world, well, not compared to where I live in China, and I would say they are at least on par with Europe, if not
they
further.
are better. China is definitely
exactly.
better technologically than in Europe. The problem is that people cannot go to China. You know what I mean? Like, China doesn't have an open door policy for migrants, and it's not based on a migrant economy. Annalena Baerbock was in Damascus the other day, and she opened the German schools back in Syria because they want to bring more migrants from Syria, but this time more selectively. So they're going to educate the people German in Syria and then bring them to Germany. And this means basically they're sucking our own skilled workers, right? It's like they're taking from our countries.
No, that's true. But what I wanted to say is that maybe the West is technologically advanced. They're socially extremely backward. I'm not going to lie. The West is socially extremely backward. And it's how can you see that? Well, you can see that when you start to analyze imperialism. That is, that if you see that every leader that the West wants, every leader that the West accepts in many parts of the world are usually the most depraved, kleptocratic, sexually deviant monsters. And every time a good guy comes up, let's say Hugo Chavez, you name it, let's say there's somebody or Burkina Faso, think about Ibrahim Traore, think about every time a good guy comes up, the West does everything to get rid of him. If you try to nationalize your resources, or you try to pull people out of poverty, you're done. The West wants you out. They want you dead. They want you killed. But if you're a monster like Netanyahu, monster like MBS, monster like Bolsonaro, monster like Al-Jolani, monsters, child raping, pedophile, torturous monsters. And I'm sorry for sounding a bit extreme here, but the more you analyze it, and Noam Chomsky already wrote about that stuff in the 80s, it's such a depraved empire that we are a part of, guys, and we have been so successfully conditioned and propagandized with the idea that we somehow live in a democracy in a free and liberal world, and now everything comes oozing out like pus during Palestine, what's happening in Palestine and Syria and Lebanon and Yemen, etc., etc. So for me, it's even as a guy who already saw during 9/11 when I was a young kid, when I saw 9/11, I was like, for me, that was already one of the most traumatic events, actually, because of everything that happened around it in those days. But even for me, somebody who already knew, with that whole war on terror after 9/11, already knew there's U.S. imperialism, was colonialism. Even somebody like me, this has been a wake-up call. What happened? What's happening right now? It's so extreme. It's so blatant, and I think or at least I hope that the rest of the world also starts seeing this stuff, because otherwise, like you said, Kevork, I do not see a way out if people don't wake up. That's all what I can say, and I include the global South. Like, stop sending your kids to Ivy League universities that are propaganda factories where they come back with pro-liberalism, pro-free market economics, all that kind of nonsense. Stop watching all these Hollywood movies. Throw CNN off the bloody cable. Stop having Google, Facebook in your country. Seriously, let the West say that you're authoritarian. Let them say you're unfree. Be like China. Refuse to get these propagandists in your nation to colonize the minds of your people. You know what I mean? I think that's the only way to get out. It's get rid of the dollar, by the way. That's the structural aspect, and also get rid of the psychological stranglehold that the West has on the rest of the world. We really need to get rid of that, and that's the media power. What do you guys think? Tarik, you probably have some thoughts.
Well, I mean, I agree with both of you about almost everything. If I add my own thought about the very specific issue of how could something really change for Palestine and the Palestinians, right? My first thought is that everybody will have to acknowledge that it will never get better except Israel ceases to exist. And I'm saying this now also for friends in Germany who cannot understand clear words. Saying that Israel has to cease to exist is not a call for genocide. Far from it. Nazi Germany ceased to exist, and the Germans are still here. The Soviet Union ceased to exist. Its population was not genocided. East Germany recently ceased to exist. States can cease to exist without a crime being committed. That's very normal. Moreover, states under international law have no right to exist. That right does not exist. It's a myth. It's nonsense. So what I'm saying is the state of Israel needs to cease existing. There is no two-state solution, in other words. All of this has to be abandoned. Palestine in the future will have to be fully re-established, and Israel as a state, as a regime, abolished, not reformed. Now, how would you get there? I understand that this is very hard. I love it when I say things like this somewhere on social media, and very smart people get back at me. This is illusionary. This is completely unrealistic. I know that. I know it's hard. I understand. But if you never think about the end goal, you can't get there, right? So let's think. How do you get to a place where Israel can actually be abolished as a state? To be honest, and I'm not calling for violence, I'm speaking as a prognosticating historian, to be honest, only with war. I'm sorry, I gotta go Bismarck here. This is blood and iron. This will be blood and iron. And it's not my fault, it's Zionism's fault. Zionism is an ideology very comparable to Nazism. It's genocidal, it's fascist, it's incredibly supremacist and racist, and it is very good at brutally indoctrinating its followers and whole populations. Therefore, such an ideology you don't talk away. Once again, I got to be Bismarck here. Such an ideology is defeated by war. That will be what will be necessary. How could that happen? Kevork is completely right. Right now in the region, we are very far from it. And of course, it would take a regional, at least, international coalition to defeat and abolish Israel. Now, there are two conditions. One is the USA must lose its leverage in the Middle East. I think this will happen. Not tomorrow, I know, but I think it will happen. And the second is that the Israeli nuclear arsenal has to be neutralized by deterrence from another nuclear power, which is why for a long time I have argued that Iran should have nuclear weapons, not only for self-defense, it has every right to have them for self-defense, but also to, in the future, establish a balance of deterrence against Israeli nuclear weapons, so that Israel will be thrown back on its conventional forces. One day, when Israel will be thrown back on conventional forces without US support, it will be defeated. Because they're not Übermenschen. They think that. They think they're Supermen, but they're not. They're a small, arrogant settler colony, hyper-equipped by the most brutal and most rich power and the most militaristic power on this planet, the USA. They couldn't have committed this genocide without the USA and its constant supplies and support. They couldn't have waged wars against Syria de facto, against Lebanon, against Hezbollah. All of this, Israelis alone can, of course, not do. Although they think they're demigods, they're actually merely human. And as it turns out, particularly bad types of human. So yeah, my answer, if you want to be very concrete, is the United States will have to leave the Middle East at some point. I think it will in the future. There has to be a nuclear deterrent effective against Israel, and then there will have to be a war. And again, if you don't like war, if you know you're a pacifist and that sounds very harsh for you, why we have a genocide going on, not my fault. The war is necessitated by Zionism and its crimes, not by people who actually point out that it's now necessary.
I just want to add one
Just
thing,
one
Tarik, and that
small
is
thing, just one small thing, Kevork, and then I'll give it to you. You know about that whole idea that they think they're Übermenschen. Well, I can tell you this: Übermenschen until they're going hand-to-hand combat against Hezbollah.
We see it all the
Then
time.
it becomes the opposite.
We see it in Gaza, by the way, if you pay close attention to the video clips we get from Hamas. And these are genuine clips. The Israelis are actually not good at all at fighting on an even level at all. If they ever face an even fight, they run, they scream, they hide. And it makes perfect sense because they are used to always having preponderant power. Take that away from them, they will have a very hard time. The Israelis are exactly not what the Soviets were in World War II. The Soviets were very badly beaten up in the first 5 to 6 months of the war, and they kept fighting, they kept fighting, they kept fighting. Everybody talks about how the Germans quickly advanced almost to Moscow. Nobody ever talks about that while they were doing this, this was the first time, except Poland, that the Germans were really taking losses all the way, all the way. They took all those prisoners, they killed a lot of Soviets, but they were taking horrendous losses, even during this first 5 months. And from then it got worse. So that was the Red Army then. It consisted, of course, people also gave up in the millions when they didn't have a chance, but many of these people were desperate fighters. I don't think Israelis are. I think Israelis are pampered, violent perverts, hyper-equipped with superior weapons all the time. That's all they have. And that sort of thing doesn't breed courage. It breeds the opposite.
Yeah, I think the ground offensive against Lebanon has shown that were it not for the brutal force of the Israeli Air Force, basically,
Exactly.
it is almost semi-impossible for them to advance inside Lebanese territories. But we're in the real world. They have fighter jets and they have the F-35s, and they're able to drop 85 tons of explosives on one person to kill him.
As of yet.
So I think Israel, when Israel is determined, they act in a very bold way and in a very harsh way, unlike their enemies. Their enemies do not do the same thing. I mean, I studied Hezbollah since 2006, and Hezbollah, I know they have the military capabilities to paralyze many of the vital infrastructure inside Israel. They haven't done it, of course, for multiple reasons. But there is also the aspect of that we're moving into different type of warfare now, mostly based on AI. So they have all these softwares making decisions for the machinery to kill people, basically, in Gaza and in Lebanon. And the human oversight is very minimum. So you're only the last decision, you either say yes or no. And most of the time, the evaluation of the AI is that, okay, this is a junior Hamas operative, or we think so. And in the discourse, if we kill 10 people, it's fine. And this person is not going to say no. So they click on yes, and they kill 10 people in the discourse of killing a supposed junior Hamas member. And similarly, when it comes to seniors in Hezbollah or senior member in Hezbollah or in Hamas, they want to kill over 100 people as a collateral damage in the discourse of killing one person. So they have weaponized different technologies and different AI systems now in this warfare, something that their enemies do not have. And in this particular case, it is, at least for me, is very mind-boggling to see the vast majority of the people in Lebanon and in Palestine, and especially those who carry out struggle, whether political struggle or military struggle against Israel, they use all the Western technologies in their hands. It's like the smartphones are Western, the applications are Western. And what Israel did, basically, since 2012, they have sucked all the WhatsApp data of all Hezbollah operatives in Syria since 2012 till 2024. And once the war started, they have known the locations and the data and the voice fingerprints of every one of them. They were able to locate many of the senior leadership in Hezbollah thanks to only knowing their voice. Because once they receive a signal of the voice, they know the location and the GPS, and somebody is carrying a smartphone with him with the GPS, and they kill him. In Syria, they used the smartwatches, Apple smartwatches, to locate senior Syrian military officials in secret locations. So they had an app, which is the running app in the Apple, which has a backdoor gate, and they're able to see even the health information of every person using this. So how fast his heart beats, his blood pressure and blood pressure and stuff, and at the same time locating them and killing them. So I remember when October 7 happened, and then the first video that Nasrallah's son, basically Jawad, published online, it was quite obvious that this was his smartphone taking a video of his father basically walking somewhere in his shoulders back and showing him walking in front of the Hezbollah flag. And it's mind-boggling for me that the son of Nasrallah during such circumstances can use his smartphone to take a video of his father and post it on Twitter, on X. So these people are even giving free information to Israel, you know?
But if I may say one thing, look, I agree with, I think, what your 2 points are, right? That on one side, you have these technologically, for now, superior Israeli and Western capacities, right? Much of this comes from the West to the Israelis. And on the other side, you have enemies who are inferior in that respect, opponents who are inferior and who also have to rely on Western technology. And that makes them even more vulnerable. And your second point, these opponents, in this case Hezbollah, they're also making great mistakes, right? But look, I think we have to zoom out a little bit for two reasons. One is, I think we have to keep a sense of proportion and not go to this point where we are starting to blame Israel's opponents for not defeating them yet. Because frankly, Israel has the much greater resources at this point because of the United States. And Israel's opponents are largely isolated. Yes, there used to be, I would say, there used to be an axis of resistance. And the rhetoric about this axis was very grandiloquent, which may have been a bit self-defeating. But the reality is, even if you take the resources of Iran, Yemen, Hezbollah, and so on together, you're still not getting to a package that equals what Israel can do with Western help at this point. So here you have to be very careful not to, let me put it like this. Do we think the Israelis are not making mistakes? I bet you they're making tons of mistakes. We just never hear about them. Because if you're very, very strong, your mistakes won't be obvious. Moreover, Western media are not keen on telling us about it. They help Israelis cover everything up, including mass murder. So why would they bring out their mistakes? The Israelis aren't superhuman. They're making mistakes too. But also, there is no other state in the world which has been given such a special permission, a license to do anything at once, such as Israel. And this is not true for Iran at all. This is not true for Yemen. This was never true for Hezbollah. They all had to work against the background of, if we make a misstep, it could be used by the US to just stomp us into the ground. That's real. Israel has sunk a United States ship with casualties in the 60s, the USS Liberty, and the United States hushed it up, right? This is a state that can do whatever, exactly, whatever they want, and they know it. So this is, in practice, it's morally revolting when you begin to see it, but also in practice, it's an enormous advantage. Everybody who fights against Israel, be it with weapons or with words, constantly has to live with the fact that the Israelis and the Zionist lobbies are allowed to do anything. Whereas when you're on the other side, you are allowed to do almost nothing. You will be punished much, much more quickly and more severely. They will never be punished, right? So it's difficult to assess in how far Israel's opponents have messed it up. I agree with you, Kevork. From the little I know, it's less than you, I know, I also have a feeling that Hezbollah waited too long, and that Hezbollah was always going to be massively attacked by Israel, and that they should have sooner come to the conclusion, look, once they're going to go after us big time, we better strike first, right? I mean, in a major way, not in the restrained way that they were practicing. If that's your point, I totally agree. But again, put it in context. Would Hezbollah then have been able to stop the Israelis? I don't think so. I think Israel would have gotten the Biden administration to help it destroy Hezbollah immediately, right? So there's also, if you're on the other side of Israel, this is an extremely hard position to be in. Now, let me raise one last point, which is, why do I think that Israel in the end will not last? In the end, here's the reason. The Israelis will not be able to extirpate their opponents, and that's what they would have to do. This is a state hated by all its neighbors. Yes, their regimes adapt, but its neighbors hate Israel. It is also a state by now hated, I think, by a majority of humanity. They're not the West. The West is small. There are 8 billion and more people on this planet. The West is not even 1 billion of them, not one, right? Israel is an extremely isolated, precarious construction by now. Yes, it has this lifeline, which is the US, not the EU. If the US dropped out of the picture, the EU could never save the Israelis. They might try because they're insane, but they couldn't, right? It's a very precarious state. And if you look at it from their perspective, they have done so much harm that they really have only two outcomes. Either we kill everyone, so there's nobody left who can take revenge on us and make us pay finally, or if we don't kill everyone, sooner or later they're going to come for us. And I think it's a second, because they won't succeed killing and suppressing everyone. The project is in a dead end already. The problem is, before that happens, they will probably commit a few more mass murders, maybe not even the last genocide they've committed, because that's the way they are. I'm sorry.
Yeah, my point is, if in a future conflict with Israel, if there's going to be an axis emerging again, if they're going to operate the same way they operated now,
no,
they will lose again.
They have
They
to
will.
learn.
They will. So it's important. It's important
Yes.
now to acknowledge that there have been mistakes, grave mistakes committed. Because I watch Arabic media, and when I turn on the media which supports the axis against Israel, and you will see all this wishful thinking, basically the same way other media outlets are operating, and it bothers me, because they're basically raising the morale of the people, and then the reality is not that. People get very depressed, and this is why when in 1948 we called it the Nakba, which is the catastrophe, and then in 67 we called it the Naksa, which is the setback. But in 2024, 2025, which things turned upside down in the region, they're calling it victories. This is the problem, right? This is packaged to the people in the Arabic world as a victory, and it is not. So we have the media is not really doing well. It is like not so when there is war, you need a war media. You need the media who is bringing the people together, and not on just slogans and sentiments and the songs and cryings or tears and stuff. No. So I think I'm not able to scroll X any longer without seeing a baby blown up, right? And this is something like I think this will not work. Just showing babies blown up, nobody is acting, unfortunately, in the outside world when they see all these killed babies, right? So there has to be focus on the people in the region, investing in the people, and stop waiting for outside powers, Russia, China, Iran. Like this is the thing. Like Syria had military-industrial complex, right? And so they had the knowledge which they shared with Iran during the first Gulf War in the ballistic missile. They got it from North Korea. Okay, they learned it, they manufactured it, they shared it with Iran. Iran advanced it, it became better. They shared it with Syria. So there was this regional, local military-industrial complex. Syria shares it with Hezbollah. Hezbollah shares it with the Palestinians. Now, with the destruction of Syria, there is not one single Arabic country which can manufacture weapons which could be reached to Palestine or to Lebanon. So it's a very, I would say, Hezbollah and Palestinians have become so isolated that they will need a few decades now to reorganize the region. But the problem is the petrodollar is in the hands of the Qataris, the Saudis, Emiratis. And the moment any new government comes, like the government of Jolani, the Emiratis come, they open the back channels with the Israelis. They are normalizing ties now with Israel. So if Syria leaves this, and if an Israeli flag flies over Lebanon, over Syria, next it will be Lebanon, right? Next it will be Lebanon. Lebanon is not, in my eyes, Lebanon is part of Syria. It's like if Syria sneezes, Lebanon gets cold. Whatever happens in Syria, it will reflect massively on Lebanon. So now we can only hope that the ethnic cleansing would be stopped, because if it happens, then this could be irreversible damage to the Palestinian cause. It's not like in 20 years we can say the Palestinians who have now ethnically cleansed to Malaysia or Indonesia or Sudan, we will send them back. We said the same thing in 48 when the Palestinians were ethnically cleansed and they never came back.
Look at Australia, New Zealand. I mean, it's not going to be reversed, probably, at least not for a very long time. And it also reminds me of what a journalist of the Cradle said. Karim is his name, and he said that he just like you, Kevork, he has a lot of critique towards the resistance, and one of his critiques was, and I remember that very good. He said I think it was his critique on Hezbollah, and he said what they are doing is just symptom destruction, not the cause. He said you just keep, in Dutch we say, mopping with the water tap open. Okay, so you have the water tap open, but you can just keep mopping. It never stops, So he said Hezbollah keeps fighting all these low-level terrorists. Okay, they have weapons. They fight these low-level terrorists in Syria and everything, and you just keep fighting the symptoms. He said, but why are they not taking it higher? For example, starting to challenge the Al Saud family in Saudi Arabia, for example. Why are they not having doing more? How can you say it? A more advanced kind of strategic thinking instead of only fighting the low level kind of stuff that you see happening right now. And I think that makes sense. It seems that they're very, very somehow. I don't know. I don't have a lot of knowledge about how that goes in the region, but it seems that they're all very comfortable. All these leaders. There was a day and age with the Arab resistance that these guys were scared, man. That they were scared, but it seems now
come on. Karim, who's going to resist these regimes in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and UAE? It should come from the anti-imperialist camp, right? So it's from the left. It's from the left. And who bought the left in the Middle East? It's Qatar. Qatar infiltrated and destroyed the left in the region, just like the left was destroyed in Europe. They have funneled like tens of millions into the so-called scholars, intellectuals, journalists. My colleagues, we graduated from the same university. They have their fancy jobs in Qatari-funded outlets, and they write articles. If you write an article for Al Jazeera, this was in 2012. They offered me $400 per article on Al Jazeera, right? If you write one article per week and you're living in the Middle East, in Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, etc., you made a hell of a money, right? And they engineered the mindset of the people. Nowadays, you see the left is basically siding with the US in the region, or so-called left.
But if I may jump in a little bit, Kevork, that I would say that is, and you're absolutely right. That's the exact same thing that happened in the West. It's the free marketization, neoliberalization of the media, put money in the media, which just had everybody sell out, and there is no real left anymore. So I'm always getting a bit icky when people say, "Oh, the left is also no." These are not leftists. The left is literally destroyed. These are right wingers that call themselves liberals. You know what I mean?
It was hijacked. It was hijacked, and there is no longer an actual left-wing scene in the Arabic world.
Right.
And the capital of the intellectuals and the writers and the journalists was Beirut. And now Beirut, how many newspapers there is in Lebanon after the As-Safir newspaper, which was closed, which adopts this classical left-wing anti-imperialist line? There is none. There is none, zero.
No money in it.
And so Azmi Bshara comes and he opens all these websites and newspapers in Lebanon. He infiltrates the left-wing scene, and then it makes everything about democracies versus tyrannies, just like the West sees the region. They have orientalized the people of the region and how they see these conflicts. And now you have a big left-wing scene basically fighting with Israel and with the United States indirectly against their own countries. And similarly goes to some of the Islamist groups in the region. And this is very controversial to say, but I have the freedom of expression on your podcast, so I say it with... I know that I will not receive so much backlash, but Hamas made a horrible mistake. Hamas in 2012, when they stood in front of the option of being with the Axis against Israel or the Qatari Axis, they joined the Qatari Axis. They left Syria, they closed their offices, and they went to Qatar. In 2010, I met with the son-in-law of Khaled Mishal in Damascus, and he used to cry crocodile tears about the importance of Syria and Damascus in this axis and how much Syria supports the axis against Israel. He used to cry in front of me. And then once the war started in Syria, in few days, they flipped. they become all of a sudden believing in the Muslim Brotherhood project in the region. My dean in the university, he was affiliated to Hamas in Damascus. And he used to tell us stories about the bravery of the Assad regime, blah, blah, blah. But once the war started, they flipped. And they even formed units in Damascus fighting against the former Syrian regime. When the regime change happened, they celebrated. Hamas celebrated. They made a statement saying, we congratulate the Syrian people for their freedom. So there are horrible mistakes happening in the region when it comes to political actors, basically, choosing the path of liberation or choosing the path of joining the Qatari camp, which is funneling lots of money and giving also many of the Hamas members this money. So there is a political affiliation with Qatar, and this has become over the affiliation to Palestine. Because once you make things about Islam versus if Palestine is only about Jerusalem, then it's not about Palestine. Because Haifa is as important as Jerusalem. And all the other towns and cities are as important as Jerusalem. So it has to be seen as a liberation movement of a country or a nation, rather than liberating only the Holy Land or the holy sites, etc. Because then when we Islamize the resistance against Israel, then Israel also uses this as a pretext, saying that this is against the Jews, right? Until 2017, Hamas never accepted the two-state solution, right?
But Kevork,
what has changed? What has changed in 2017? What has changed? It was the Qataris who convinced Hamas to change their charter, right? Now they accept the two-state solution. After accepting the two-state solution, what happened to Hamas now in Gaza? So mistakes after mistakes after mistakes. This is something that I say it with, because when I see the region and I see all this turmoil, yes, I'm always blaming and criticizing the West, but at the same time, I truly want to focus also on the local actors in the region.
But look, Kevork, I agree with all of this. But look, I know it's a far-fetched analogy, right? But I think we are getting now to a perspective where our horizon has become very, very presentist, as if there is no long-term future. And there's no reason to assume there's no long-term future. I personally, and I won't explain why, because it goes very far. I know that Norman Finkelstein, also in his dark moments, which he sort of enjoys, I think, a little bit, loves to predict that the Palestinians will simply be exterminated, like, say, the natives of what is now America were largely exterminated. And I think he's wrong. I think he's historically wrong. I don't think that sort of project will work. But that is a long discussion. But I would warn against making that assumption that the Palestinians can simply be exterminated, right? I know it has happened in history, but that doesn't mean it's possible to do it now. The other thing that I think is very important, look, here's my far-fetched analogy. Let's say you are in 1812 and Napoleon is advancing through Russia, and you don't know yet that he's going to suffer his worst defeat ever, and from then on it's downhill, right? It's before Borodino. Maybe it's even after Borodino, the battle before Moscow, and all you hear is that the French won. You don't know the details. You don't know it's a Pyrrhic victory. And you would look back at all his opponents, the British, the Austrians, they're the worst, the Prussians, don't talk even about the smaller ones, and you would say mistake after mistake. Everybody who ever tried to stop this guy, maybe he's a genius, but also they all made mistake after mistake. And that's true. That's true. One reason why Napoleon gets as far as he does is because everybody makes mistakes. And not only that, they're constantly playing and they're betraying each other all the time. Nobody can rely on each other. And yet, you scroll forward to 1813 and the picture has changed massively. So look, there is something history tells us. It is true that in history, it's simply a fact that the realm of the possible always exceeds our imagination by far. And I'm not trying to say this as some sort of utopian wishy-washy, and I want to just have a lot of hope out of nowhere. I understand how horrible things are, but I still don't see a path for Israel to end this on its terms. And as long as Israel can't end this on its terms, it will never go away. And that means there is a long-term future here. Imagine, I give you one speculative example to sort of make it a bit more concrete. Imagine there is a big war between China and the US. That's perfectly possible in the next 10 to 20 years. And imagine that the US loses. Totally possible. Or at least that the US is damaged massively. Maybe it doesn't lose, maybe it's a draw, but the US doesn't get out of this in good shape. Definitely not. And the US retreats from the world for a while. That's possible. That's not impossible. This is how you get from the French Commune being defeated in 1871 to the Soviet Union emerging in 1918. Yes, there's a catastrophe in between called World War I. But history produces these catastrophes. It does, unfortunately, regularly. So I'm not arguing that we should hope for a catastrophe, but I am saying you are absolutely right, I think, about everything you have said. But it doesn't mean Israel is winning. And I have to say, look, the Palestinians are resisting. They're fighting. I don't want to end up with a discourse that says you guys don't have a chance. For two reasons. I don't believe that's true. I actually don't believe it for all the reasons I've just explained. But also, why would I say this to people who are resisting? They're not giving up. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, yeah, I have understood that there's no way out for you. Maybe they're smarter. Maybe they're right that they keep fighting.
Yeah, but the solution again is coming from outside. You see, like this, we're waiting for something to come from outside, not from the region itself.
It might be a mix.
I would also say that I agree, Tarik. I would also say we don't even have the right to give up. I mean, the Palestinians are still fighting for their survival, and how dare we or any of us doubt the possibility of them being eventually victorious, and giving up hope is just no possibility in my opinion. And what you say about that, the history shows that you can actually there's nothing you can predict. I mean, just look at the sudden collapse of the Soviet Union. I mean, that is also an event where you would, if you would go back a decade, people would not predict it like that. But I do have one last question, if I may, and that is, what do you think then? Because you talk about, okay, this should be better, the resistance should do this better and that better, Kevork. So my question is, why is it that these leaders, think about Jordan, think about Saudi Arabia, are so safe these days? And what I'm talking about is the resistance. Why is the resistance mopping with the water tap open? Why are they fighting low-level terrorists? Why are they going across borders to Syria to fight there against all these low-level guys? Why isn't there a more strategic kind of fight against the big power players? Because to me, it right now, it really seems like that drawing that you always see, yeah? These colonialists, these puppet players, and then you see the people in these societies all fighting with each other, and you have these puppet players on top. They're just completely safe. What is it that the resistance is not dealing with the bigger guys? Think about the leader in Jordan, for example, or Egypt, or Saudi Arabia. What's going on here? What do you think, Kevork?
I mean, the Axis have tried with Saudi Arabia when Saudi Arabia waged a war against Yemen, right? And the missiles were falling on the Saudi oil factories, basically. And the Saudis retreated from that. But waging and other type of warfare, let's say destabilization or covert operation, or this is not in any way or shape the strategy of the Axis. They have never done it. They don't go into Saudi Arabia inside, or Bahrain or Kuwait or the UAE and destabilize it from within. This is a big question mark. But we have to also see that the Axis mostly was formed by the Shia actors in the region, right? So waging this type of any military effort or intelligence effort against these countries, it will turn out into full-blown sectarian war in the region, and these countries will mobilize the Takfiris in the region, saying that this is a holy war against the infidels, right? And now thousands and thousands of Hadi forces, they are ISIS, Al-Qaeda, they have mobilized in Yemen to attack Ansarullah. And those are supported by Saudi Arabia and the UAE. The HTS forces, Nusra, ISIS, I mean, who funded them? All the money came from Qatar and Saudi Arabia, right? Those were some of the rich individuals in Kuwait. So I don't think this is going to be a good idea to, if you don't have local actors in these countries, in Saudi Arabia, doing this type of actions against their government, then it's not going to work out. But as long as these countries are able to feed their people to the maximum level, everybody has these big bellies and eating non-stop, and they have everything in their hand. I mean, see the pattern. Like when someone from Syria travels to the UAE, right? Everything changes. The mentality changes, lifestyle changes, the priorities change. So I argued for some time that after 2018, the UAE opened its borders to the Syrian skilled workers. Everyone and anyone can get a visa very quickly. But once you go there and you're living in privilege and you're living in welfare and your lifestyle has changed, your concern shifts from any geopolitical direct conflict with any actor in the region into just taking care of your businesses and your money and your new watch and your new car. So you become in a capitalist, let's say, society, which is just giving you opportunity after opportunity to change and replace and change, like, including my friends, you know, and you can see it clearly on social media. All of a sudden, people start taking their photos in front of the cars, see my watch and this and that. But a few years ago, these people were active on social media platforms, and they
That's the power of capitalism. You see it with AOC. You see it with AOC that started out like, oh, this firebrand, and now she has all these Vogue covers and she's in these rich parties and yeah, money, man. That has the power.
I also like to have more money and the car and this stuff, but at the same time, I think there are some people are born within themselves. They feel responsibility. Some people feel responsible for other people. They're more caring. They want to, when they see something wrong, they speak against it. There's so many people see the wrong things and they just don't speak about it. They say, I can't change it. This is not my problem, and they work. And the majority of the people are that way, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I thought maybe Tarik is gonna say some final words. I don't know if there are any final words that are in your mind.
Punch me in the face now at the end of the.
I was thinking. I don't have anything to add, really, or final words. That would be a false claim. I don't. I think Kevork is right, unfortunately, about the enormous, this pervasive power of getting tired, bored, co-opted. These enormous, large-scale processes constantly going on, right? And I think he's completely correct about this, that this also unfortunately produces a lot of the political power that's behind the oppression and in the end the mass murder we see, right? This neutralization of the opposition constantly through these social processes. But again, I mean, the only thing I would say is that we know from history that sometimes it does break down, right? But that's all I would say about that. But I agree, I cannot disagree.
We were still young enough, Tarik, probably to.
I was just thinking before we wrap up. I was just thinking, Kevork, because unfortunately I don't speak Arabic, even though my dad is from Algeria. I don't know how is that with you, Tarik. You're also half North African.
Terrible.
Yeah. So same here.
I speak Arabic with an accent, brother, and I'm not even Arab.
You're lucky. You're lucky. You should be happy.
Arabic should be your mother tongue, right, Kevork? You're born in Syria?
Yeah, I mean, Armenian and Arabic, in my opinion, are both my mother tongues.
Right, and I you know what I think would be a good idea for your program, Kevork? You are following Arabic news media, right?
Yes.
I think what you should do sometimes is actually discuss one of the segments, good segments that you see in the Arabic news media, because I've heard many times now already that often there is news in Arabic media that is very good, but that we just do not see in the rest of the
Yes.
world. And,
Yes, that's true.
and I think if you do that maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, pick out some segments that are very important for geopolitical analysis and in your own way translate that to your audience. I think that would be very good, because we are
Yeah.
missing out a lot.
I think it's a good, yes, it's a good, really good. I should do it, basically. Yes.
Okay, guys, thank you so much. That was great. A bit of an update and our own feelings about that. Wonderful, and I think I'm going to invite you guys again in the future to do that again for another round.
We will get you on our show. We have Cold
yes.
War 2.0, our weekly show on Friday.
Yeah.
You're right.
Definitely, and we will hopefully have some better news in the future to discuss. But I'm a pessimist, so I don't have a lot of high hopes, but hope I do have. So anyway, here it's evening, so good evening for me, and a good afternoon for you guys over there, and hopefully talk to you again.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thanks for organizing. Thank you.